Hello, my friends. Today we'll start with another statement from Putin. He said he doesn't see the point in negotiations with Zelensky, but later he decided to invite him to Moscow.
I never refuse this, as long as the meeting is well prepared and could lead to some positive, possible results. By the way, Thelma asked me, if possible, to hold such a meeting. I said yes, that's possible. Well, in the end, if Zelensky is ready, let him come to Moscow. Such a meeting will take place.
Friends, be sure to write your thoughts about this in the comments. And Trump keeps doing nothing, once again saying last night that he has nothing to say about it. I have no message for Putin. He knows my position and will make a decision one way or another. Whatever his decision is, we'll be happy or not. And if we are unhappy, you'll see the consequences. As we can see, we've been hearing these promises for months, but there are still no consequences for refusing negotiations. And even journalists said that he's not taking action, and that's why he gave a harsh response. How do you know there is no action? Really? But I'm concerned. Now wait. How do you know there is no action? Did you say that imposing secondary sanctions on India, the biggest buyer outside of China, almost equal? Did you say that's not action? That's costing Russia hundreds of billions of dollars. You call that no action. I haven't even done phase 2 or phase 3 yet. But when you say there is no action, I think you should find a new job. Because if you remember, 2 weeks ago, I said if India buys, India will have big problems. And that happened. So don't tell me about this. As we can see, Trump is very angry. Nothing is working out for him, but he insists that he's acting. At the same time, he said that in the coming days, he plans to talk to Putin to make further decisions.
Well, I'm having a conversation with him very shortly, and I'll know pretty much what we're going to be doing. We've taken very strong action, as you know, and in other ways we've taken very strong action. But I'll be speaking to him over the next few days, and we're going to see. I'm going to know exactly what's happening. But I'm not happy with all the people. You got 7,819 people killed.
Friends, be sure to write your thoughts about this in the comments. Meanwhile, while China and North Korea are actively helping Putin, even sending their troops into the Kursk region, Ukraine's partners, represented by Poland, said that Ukraine wants to drag everyone into the war.
Do you remember November 15th, 2022?
November 15th.
Yes, probably the hardest day because of the missile in Przyjaźń. Back then, President Zelensky called. You could say he was pressuring us to declare it was a Russian missile. You could put it that way. Were you shocked?
No.
But didn't you take it as an attempt to drag Poland into the war? And what did you say to him?
Nothing. At first, they tried to pull everyone into the war. Obviously, it's in their interest to involve everyone, especially NATO countries. Obviously, they're looking for those who would fight against the Russians. This is nothing new. It's been happening since day one. After all, the dream of the country's leader in Ukraine's situation would be for all of NATO to stand with them and the Ukrainian army. At the start of the war, the army was weak and poorly equipped, relying on Zelensky's courage and the heroism of Ukrainian soldiers who defended their country with their own chests. If that army had immediately received NATO support, tanks, soldiers with equipment fighting shoulder to shoulder with them against the Russians, that would have been their dream. Anyone would dream of that. We would too if we were in their situation, right? Only we couldn't agree to that. Simply put, we, Poland, as a NATO country, could never agree to that.
And why did President Zelensky, why didn't the Ukrainian authorities apologize for Przyjaźń? Why did they stall the Polish prosecutors' investigation by not providing so-called legal assistance?
So please, ask Zelensky about that, and please ask the Ukrainian authorities about it.
These are our partners. If a missile had hit North Korea, I think Kim Jong un wouldn't be arguing with Putin about whose missile it was or what Russia wanted. He would have immediately joined the war and crushed the enemy. But as we can see, Poland is something entirely different. France, be sure to write your thoughts about this in the comments. Meanwhile, Podolyak reappeared on air and said that Ukraine could have accepted a freeze of the war along the front line, but as we can see, Russia no longer agrees to this.
What ending of the war would be acceptable for Ukraine? That we were ready to freeze along the current front line. How realistic is that?
If we speak realistically, yes, one possible scenario is a freeze along the front line, and the president talks about this. But I think the decision about the final scenario, what it will be made by the president. For now there are consultations at the level of the president of Ukraine and European leaders, and they have a clear vision, understanding, and the risks that Russia will continue to carry. There's a decent negotiation process, despite everything, with our American colleagues. I think that after the events in Beijing and Tianjin, in recent days, I think the United States will look even more realistically on what's happening in the world, how the global order is being reshaped, who will dominate, and why allow this reshaping to be completed. And if you want this reshaping not to look so anti-American, then you need to invest in Ukraine. I don't mean directly, but invest in making sure the war ends more or less fairly, so that Russia gets nothing, no dividends at all.
And today, Zelensky said that Putin is planning to strike deep inside Ukraine before winter.
We need to have enough capacity to protect ourselves. Putin hopes that winter will kill our people in places his troops can't reach, and we cannot allow that. Here, air defense is of great importance.
Zelensky also said that he will not give Putin the Donetsk region.
To give up some territory in order to secure peace, no one trusts Putin. For some, it's just territory. But for us, it's our lives, our history, our constitution. These are homes, families, many aspects that are very sensitive. Those who left their homes because of bombings and occupation, they want to return. Yes, maybe now it seems unrealistic, but they will come back. When we all say that we don't trust Putin, it means there is no single approach or reasonable approach in the form of trading territory. If you don't trust this person, if this person has already partially occupied you, if you understand all aspects of a full-scale war, meaning, if you step back, if someone supports this crazy idea, who can then guarantee you that Putin won't continue? No one can guarantee that. He has lied many times, so we cannot trust him. We cannot give him territory under any circumstances. This is a very powerful part of our defense line. He has already lost many servicemen there, more than 100,000, especially in the main directions. I mean Putin, so it's clear that in 4 years he has not managed to occupy even 30% of just one region of Donbas. Clear, obvious. So if he goes further, he will need years. I don't know how many years, but it will be years. And you have to understand that the issue here is not only years, not only time. The issue is that he would have to throw in millions of soldiers. That's why we will not give him such gifts.
Thus, the struggle continues and activity remains very high along the entire front line. And today we'll start right away with the Kupyansk direction. Here, in the area of Dvorichna, attacks are still ongoing near Krasne Pershe, but Russia has had no success. At the same time, between Kupyansk and Dvorichna, the Russians are trying to stretch the front line, and they're managing to do so. They advanced toward Monachenivka by 2 kilometers and 700 meters. In this way, they are trying to pull the flank to worsen the situation both for the Dvorichna direction and for Kupyansk. At the same time, in Kupyansk itself, Ukrainian side doesn't confirm the loss of half of the city. Official report on that fighting continues on the outskirts. And the Russians are also assaulting Petropavlivka, but here they failed to break through. Meanwhile, geolocation maps already indicate that Russians are inside Kupyansk, while Ukrainian counterattacks near the village of Myrne are noted only in the gray zone. For now, unfortunately, the situation here is unclear. We need to wait and see how events develop. In the Borova direction, things remain quiet for now, with no new attacks recorded. In the Lyman direction, the Russians have once again managed to advance quite significantly across the fields. They are already breaking through toward the settlement of Dobropillia. At the same time, fighting continues in the areas of Zaporizhzhia, Kolodezi, Kharkivka, and Olhivka. And over the past day alone, about 30 assaults have been recorded as before. So here, the Russians are sparing no resources. Looking at the bigger picture, they are trying to move toward Lyman and then on to Slavyansk. In the Siversk direction, the Russians have also advanced slightly further in the area of Verkhnyokamensky, closer to Siversk. Fighting continues in the areas of Yampil and Dronivka. They assaulting Serebryanka, breaking through beyond Grigorivka and Vyemka, and storming Fedorivka. For now, the Ukrainian side hasn't confirmed the capture of Fedorivka by the Russians. And in the Kostyantynivka direction, assaults continue on Stupochki, Pretechene, Plishivka, and the village of Klebanbyk. And they are also breaking through from Yablonivka to the village of Berestok, as well as in the areas of Poltavka and Rusin Yar. However, for now, the front line here remains unchanged. In the Dobropillia direction, the Russians are making very serious efforts to expand the territory under their control and are actively assaulting the villages of Vilne, Nove Shahove, Ivanivka, and Nikonorivka. Here, they're trying to stretch the front line as close as possible to Dobropillia. At the same time, they're storming Volodymyrivka, and fighting is ongoing in the area of Pankivka. But within the past day, no changes have been recorded, and the battles continue. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians are assaulting Rodinske, breaking through from Krasny Liman toward Myrnograd. And there are also clashes in Novoekonomichne, breakthroughs near Myrolubivka, assaults on Promень and Lysivka, attempts to advance near Dachinsk and Chunishane, and they are pushing into the outskirts of Pokrovsk. They are also storming Udachne and Molodetske. So far, no changes have been recorded in the past day, but the situation here is catastrophic. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russians are assaulting the outskirts of Ivanivka, Zeleny Gai, Iskra, and Alexandrograd. However, for now, they haven't managed to advance further, and the fighting continues. In the Velyka Novosilka direction, attacks are ongoing in the areas of Komushuvacha and Temirivka, but no new changes have been recorded over the past day. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, no new assaults have been reported so far. The Russians are currently building up reserves and carrying out a large number of strikes using FPV drones in preparation for new assaults. In the Kherson direction, attacks on the islands continue, but the Russians have had no success and the situation hasn't changed over the past day. Now, let's move to the border areas. In the Kharkiv direction, all attacks have stopped, activity is minimal again, and the front line remains unchanged. In Vovchansk, fighting continues, but the Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling all attacks and the situation is stable. In the Sumy direction, the Russians continue to advance toward Andriivka across the fields and are also moving past Yablonivka through the fields. They're trying to hold new positions, but the Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling them and the front line remains unchanged. Meanwhile, Putin stated that Ukraine's security should be ensured by Russia.
And now we see European leaders who speak and discuss some guarantees of security for Ukraine are almost entirely focused on deploying their troops in Ukraine. At the same time, many continue to insist on Ukraine joining the EU. But we also see that the European Union is rapidly transforming from what was once an economic union into a sort of military political bloc, with almost constant aggressive decisions and statements. How can you comment on all this?
I agree with those who believe that every country has the right to choose its own system of security. This applies to all countries, including Ukraine. But it also means that the security of one country cannot be ensured at the expense of another, in this case, the Russian Federation. We have always opposed Ukraine joining this North Atlantic bloc, but we never questioned its right to conduct its economic and commercial activities as it wishes, including pursuing EU membership.
Overall, the succors continues. Meanwhile, the US Secretary of Defense said that because Russia is closely cooperating with China, the US is already preparing for war.
Well, unfortunately, the weakness of the previous administration has driven Russia and China closer together. That was a terrible development of a lack of American leadership and a lack of American strength. And you saw it around the world, and it manifests in what we saw on TV last night. But that's why President Trump has charged us at the Defense Department to be prepared to rebuild our military in historic ways, to restore the warrior ethos and reestablish deterrence, not because we seek conflict. We do not. And we've been clear about that with China or Russia or others, but because by being prepared, you prevent it. You ensure that the American people and the homeland are safe, and demonstrations of parades are fine, but they don't hopefully manifest in actually military conflict. So we know what they believe and what they're about. We also know how strong we are and the military advantages we have. They know that also. Our job's to maintain those military advantages in space, in the skies, in the sea, under the sea, and with long-range fires. All the capabilities we have, Golden Dome, which is something China knows they can't replicate, and we will inside this administration. So we're going to maintain the strategic advantage. President Trump has a great relationship with President Xi, and we'll leverage that in hoping to find ways that we can work together. Otherwise, we'll always be prepared.
Overall, it seems this parade has seriously alarmed the US, and now they justify having even stronger weapons. Friends, be sure to write your thoughts about this in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.